Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where it happened. I got our space plane into orbit, with less than one thrust to weight too. I like it. Now I'm not sure how replicable this is, but we are objectively in orbit here. I decided to start now because I don't know if I can do it again. So what we're going to do here is we are going to revert this, and I'll show you what we've got. This is similar-ish to what we left off with. I got rid of the ridiculous top-mounted booster. It ended up very much not working. And we have this instead. So we've got our two missiles here with our hammer solid fuel boosters. We added a third guided missile here to each wing. And I do want to actually duplicate these air brakes, and I want to place them down here, because we kind of need additional control when we get a little higher. We did have a small tumbling issue that we managed to get under control. So we're going to enable the pitch and yaw for both of those. Like so. Okay. Let's see if I can replicate getting this into orbit. I don't know. It felt replicable. Like, I didn't do anything unusual. So, let's see what we can get done here. Now, we do require almost a full SRB to just get off the ground. It's slightly ridiculous. And I was actually just thinking, right before I noticed that we were going to make it into orbit, I was just thinking that we might have to tap into the oxidizer storage that we have available in our fuselage. We don't have to, which is good, because we're pretty heavy as is. So, let's see if we can't replicate this, shall we? Throttle up, SAS on, and off we go. We're going to try to lift off as quick as possible. And we'll be lifting off in a moment here. We have lots of underslung engines. Let's lift our landing gear. And we'll just hang out here at the 45-degree mark. That's what I did previously when we succeeded. So that's one of our missiles already burned out. And we'll just chill at... Whoa! That's very, very sensitive. Okay, we'll just chill at that 45-degree mark. About like so. We're about to run out on these SRBs as well. And there they go, and our liquid-fueled engines are taking over from here. We have about a minute of burn time, and we're just going to try to get as much altitude as possible here. Push out our apoapsis as far as we can. That's the goal here. And we're starting to nose up here, which is the opposite of what we want right now. This is that instability that I was talking about, that I was hoping an additional air brake would fix. Is really wanting to nose up currently. And that is what we want to prevent. So this is not the most stable of things right now. In fact, we are really drifting. Let's see if we can recover it. I kind of don't think we can. Like I said, I wasn't sure how replicable that was. If we can avoid this tumble, we can get into space. That's the thing. We can't apparently always avoid the tumble. And at this point, we're not going to make it. So let's go ahead and revert that back. And I guess I'm going to take that air brake on that I put onto the bottom off. That didn't seem to help very much, in all honesty. If anything, I feel like that might have made it worse. Now, I did still make it to space with a tumble previously. There was a tumble. It was in the last couple of seconds of the liquid-fueled engines, and we were able to recover it. It was a little earlier this time, which is why I'm saying that that air brake felt like it didn't help. So let's get this loaded in here, and let's see if we can get this thing into space. I know it's possible at this point, because I've done it. So let's see if we can replicate it. If we can, then that's great. We did have to burn off almost all of the Delta V that was available. That's okay, though. And we're going to lift off here. Going to lift up our gear as well. Right now, in fact. And up we go. We've acquired enough speed to achieve lift. And there goes our SRBs. Wonderful. We're pretty stable with the SRBs. It's when we activate these swivels that things can get a little bit spicy. I've definitely noticed that. It kind of feels like on this ascent, you kind of just don't want to touch it. Okay. If we added like a slight angle to these swivels, it might be a little bit better. Let's just check our apoapsis here, and you can see that our nose is drifting upward slowly over time here. Which isn't exactly what we want, but it's not shocking considering that this is offset from our center of mass. So we've got another 30 seconds of burn here, and I'm just letting it raise the nose. That seems to be what we want here, is to raise the nose, actually. And we're going to drift slightly off of our heading, but that's okay. That is completely fine. Only 10 seconds left here. We're going to start very sharply going up here very soon. Yep, see it right there. 2, 1, 0. We detach those. And now we're able to control again, because we don't have that drag from down here. So that makes things much, much, much better. You can see here we're 41 seconds to apoapsis, something along those lines. I'm going to try to adjust our heading just a little bit here. And we're going to continue hanging out at about this point. Our apoapsis will continue to rise. Now, previously I physics warped through this, and I'm not sure if that has an effect. I'm going to try not physics warping here. But we can see that our thrust to weight ratio here is 0.72. It's only 0.98 when we made it to orbit previously. You can see our surface velocity, and actually we just switched over to orbital. Our orbital velocity is coming up quite nicely. So we're just going to keep an eye on this. I think this makes it to space. Well, it makes it to space. I think it makes it to orbit, more specifically. But like I said, we did burn almost all of our fuel previously just to get it into space, so a refueling mission will be in orbit. In order. But we don't have to fill up the oxidizer here, only the liquid fuel. And remember, the oxidizer is the heavier part. So that's not too bad. We can maybe bring that over from Minmus. We may actually have enough to get to Minmus in this thing. It's hard to say. We're continuing to raise up our apoapsis here. That's wonderful. I'm going to tip our nose down a bit to that 45-degree marker. I want to get a little bit more horizontal speed. We're at the point now where horizontal speed is almost the same as vertical speed. So I'm actually going to point us prograde right now. So let's just get pointed prograde here. Now that's maybe a mistake. I didn't do that previously. I feel like we're moving a bit slower. Maybe we tumbled a bit differently. Maybe the physics warp had something to do with it. I mean, it's probably too late at this point. I mean, we're going back down. That's for sure. The physics warp may have had something to do with it. I did successfully make it previously, but we do need a docking port on this, and that's something that we should do. I do wonder if that physics warp had an effect there. So I'm going to put a docking port on here. I'm going to put in a docking port Junior. And that is going to go... not a Grande. That is going to go right up here. like that. Now, this is not intended to dock with another corvette or to initiate the docking. It's supposed to have something come in and refuel it, a tanker of some type. So that'll be fine. And now the question is it an issue with the physics warp that we saw that allowed me to get into space previously? Or is it just an execution thing? It may have been that if we had remained at 45 degrees, it would have been fine. Let's find out. I know it's possible. We may just have to get lucky with our tumble at the end of the burn. It's hard to say. One thing is for sure, I'm happier going more up and even a little bit backwards like we did there than going sideways. I would prefer to go more up than sideways. Well, are you going to load KSP? I don't know. I've been doing a lot of reloading here, so it's possible it might crash one of these times, but this is not that time. Excellent. So let's go ahead and get lifted off here. Cruising right along at a decent speed here already. Landing gear up. And we're going to hang out at 45 degrees. There we go. To our second SRBs. I also experimented with burning the SRBs later and burning this guy first when we had more air. It did make us more stable, but also a lot slower. Our thrust to weight on these SRBs is higher than our thrust to weight on this stage, so... especially at sea level. Okay. There we go. And we're going to chill out right around here. I'm wondering if we should ditch the air brakes for the weight. I'm not sure they're actually doing anything, but the tumbling did start to seem better when I put them on. So I may try ditching them to save the weight, and that may end up being a pretty good difference maker here. So let's give this a go here. We are very, very close to achieving orbit with this thing on a regular basis. And that would be absolutely wonderful. Currently about 15 more seconds here. I'm not touching the pitch here. You can see that SAS is trying to hold the pitch. And it's going to start failing. 2, 1, 0. Okay. There we go. And now we will reorient, which we're now capable of doing, apparently. And we will hold right here. So what is our apoapsis? 33 kilometers. Now, I'm not going to physics warp here because I suspect that physics warping might have had something to do with it. I am going to hold 45 degrees. That's what I did previously to make it into orbit. And if this doesn't work, we'll test the physics warping to see if that causes issues with that. If that's the case, then we know that we are incredibly close to achieving orbit here. And we just need a tiny bit more thrust to weight. But I think tossing our altitude up just that little bit higher could have made the difference. Because these engines are much more powerful out of the atmosphere, and if you can get out of the atmosphere, then that is amazing. So we're just going to hold 45 degrees here and see how this goes. I also noted that our time to apoapsis started going down much faster when we went to prograde. So that's another reason that we're just going to chill up here this time. Technically, we could go for full vertical, but I don't want to do that. Time to apoapsis of 23 seconds. It will actually be substantially longer than that. And that's because we're currently applying a lot of power into getting our vertical speed. You can still see the KSC over there. And our nose is tipping upward right now, and I think I'm kind of okay with that. I want to be transitioning into getting a little bit more altitude here. Apoapsis of currently about 50 kilometers, which is where we were before when we hit the apoapsis. So that's nice. That's very nice, in fact. Time to apoapsis should start increasing here pretty soon based on what I saw previously. It was, I think 16 seconds was when it started increasing on my successful attempt off camera. Just holding, yep, there we go, up to 17. That means we made it into orbit. Right there. Fantastic. That was a successful launch. KSC's way back there now. We're still looking at getting some altitude here. And I'm completely fine with continuing to get altitude. Now, we are currently losing some horizontal speed due to our wing structure because we're going up so steeply right now. That's to be expected. 58 kilometers. I mean, this thing is not powerful. Not powerful at all. But it gets there. It gets there. 60 kilometers is our current apoapsis. I'm going to pitch us down a little bit towards that 45-degree marker. I do want to be getting more horizontal speed. That will be necessary. 63 kilometers. 64. 65. Only about 10 more kilometers of altitude to get. 66. 67. 68. I'm going to switch over to pure prograde right now. There we go. We should be much more aerodynamic now. And yes, this isn't going to go up amazingly fast. But that's okay. We need horizontal speed now. That's exactly what we're getting. Yes, time to apoapsis is coming down. But that's fine. $71. We're going to be hitting 72 kilometers here quite soon. Congrats, Valentina. You are in space. Now, you just need to get in orbit. Time to apoapsis is kind of holding at 33. Still holding at 33. Now it's going up. That means that we need to cut the engines and burn a little bit later. We'll try burning at 30. Still going up. We'll try at 25. I could do this with a maneuver node and it would be more accurate, but that sounds like work. Okay, still going up. We'll try again at 20. Still going up. We'll try again at 15. We're basically in orbit at this point. Still going up. Try it again at 10. Again, this would be better if I had used a maneuver node. We would waste less fuel. Okay, it is coming up here. We're going to let that continue to go down to about 5. Okay. Just going to go to basically the apoapsis here. And I should probably remember to extend this solar panel. And there we go. There's our Corvette in space. Whee! Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So now the question becomes, how do we get it back to the ground? Well, I mean, we can glide it in. That is a thing that we can do. We'd have to bleed off a fair amount of speed to make that happen. We haven't really considered it, though. I'm kind of feeling we might want to have a couple of parachutes back here. That said, when those deploy, they're going to give us a bunch of drag back here. And then they're going to drop us to the ground nose first, rather than just being the slowdowns that I'd like. Of course, we could cut the parachute when we got slow enough, and then just glide in. We could go in belly first and have a parachute like here and a parachute here, and then like a main here, and just go in belly first. That's all options. Now, this was still a simulation. Don't get me wrong. I actually kind of like that concept, though, of those parachutes. So let's simulate that real quick. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put on a pair of drogue chutes, and those would be not in mirror mode. So we'd put on a drogue chute here, and a drogue chute, say, here. And then our main chute, we would try to put as over our center of mass as possible. Now, keep in mind, our center of mass is going to come this way a little bit as we ditch these. So I think I'd put it perhaps like halfway in between these two. Something like that. And then, yep, those parachutes would go out there. Okay, so this is still going to be simulated. What we're going to do is we're going to put this up in orbit, a simulated orbit. We're going to ditch the components that we wouldn't have when we get there. Unfortunately, we can't really simulate our fuel level. So we'll do the best we can there. But as soon as this loads up, we'll put ourselves up into a simulated orbit. I mean, we could simulate our fuel level, I suppose. But that sounds like work, too. So yeah, I'm thinking we just try to come in belly first. And we'll have to figure out what position that is. Okay, so let's put ourselves up into, let's see here, set position, or rather set orbit, over Kerbal, with the altitude being, let's see, that's the semi-major axis. I can never remember how to do this. What's this altitude? This is approximately correct. Okay, so next we are going to ditch all of these engines. So we're going to mash the spacebar a bit here. Okay. What did that actually do to our orbit? Well, we ditched those as well. Okay. That's interesting. Our landing gear should be like so. Okay. And our orbit looks reasonably fine here. So let's go ahead and hop over to retrograde. And yeah, ditching these is hugely wasteful, but I mean, that's what happens. So we're just going to position here for now. And we're going to pull our periapsis down to, I don't know, maybe around 30 kilometers. Now here's the question. Are we capable of holding the correct attitude? Which would, I believe, be either normal or anti-normal. And I think both would work, in theory. This isn't exactly... Well, actually, no, this is the attitude that I'd want. We would want to come in belly first like this. Now, I am expecting quite a bit of heating. I'm expecting potential blow-ups from heating forces. And these are both drogue chutes here. I don't expect that we're going to be able to hold this attitude, necessarily. Our main chute should definitely be in its own location, like that. Okay. Shall we see how capable we are of holding this attitude? Let's head on in. Okay, we're going to need to rotate here. Not that way. We're going to need to rotate over like this, approximately. Maybe a little bit more like this. Okay. And we'll be entering Atmo now. So how capable of this are we? I'm guessing not tremendously. I am expecting that we are going to have some issues here. So we can see here our apoapsis coming down. We are absolutely committed to this re-entry if this was a real re-entry, not a simulated one. And our next press of the spacebar will release our drogue chutes. Okay. We have a lot of surface area here. So that's working in our favor. You can see here our apoapsis is already decreasing, and so's our periapsis, by a pretty hefty margin. We've already dropped over 2 kilometers off of our periapsis, which is slightly insane, to be sure. We are still accelerating towards the periapsis, which is fine, but we're not accelerating hugely. So far, we're able to hold this attitude, but for how long? Like, I do expect that we're not going to be able to hold this attitude. We are already decelerating, though. Wow. I mean, we have a big surface area here. There's no doubt about that. Keep in mind, we're not doing any burning here. None whatsoever. And we're not actually attempting to land this thing on a runway, although that should theoretically be possible. If we had the correct trajectory. I'm not convinced that we could get powered flight with these in Atmo. At least not sustainable powered flight. We'd be able to get maybe a little extra distance, but I'm not convinced that we'd have enough lift. This would be basically a glider. We're decelerating pretty good here. You can see, though, we're drifting off of the node, and that's what I was afraid of here. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Drifted to prograde. That's kind of the opposite of what we want. I'm not surprised that we have a hard time holding that attitude. I'm really, really not. We make our way back over? Kinda, yeah. Actually. We're getting some good deceleration here. I'm going to put it onto stability assist. And I'm wondering, because I was just relying on SAS there. Fascinating. It definitely wants to go to prograde, but what if we tell it to go to one of the radials here? I mean, we struggle. There's no doubt about that. But then we can roll it to however we need to be, like this, to bleed off more speed. Right? I mean, it's not great. It's not elegant. But it does bleed off speed. This is a bit of an issue here. That heating effect. It definitely doesn't like to sit belly first. We're not shocked by this. In fact, this is going better than I expected right now. It's going quite a lot better than I expected. I'm going to put it back onto stability assist here. And in fact, I think we safely land this. Unless we have too much heating. That is a possibility. But we have a lot of surface area here. This tumble isn't pretty. There's no doubt about it. We could theoretically help this with maybe like some air brakes here. And up top as well, that are designed to help us maintain stability and slow down. It's an interesting option, for sure. We're down to 1.7 kilometers per second. I think we're safe. Like, I think we're completely safe here. Let's try to get to prograde. Okay, we've just about got this tumble under control, actually. And look how slow we're going. Like, that actually Like I said, not the most elegant, but it actually worked. I'm going to turn SAS off at this time. And we're just going to let this aerodynamically fall where it may. We're still 20 kilometers up. Well, actually 18 kilometers up. Drogue chutes are deployable now, though. And that'll pull us back to being largely belly first. Or to wanting to be belly first, anyway. Especially once this main goes out. And then I'm going to put out the landing gear as well. We're going to SAS this to prograde, and we're going to try to stabilize. But I'm going to do this. We're going to time warp down to the surface. Well, there's still a pretty good tumble, right? There's no doubt about that. But it worked better than I expected. Quite a lot better than I expected. I'm going to turn on the brakes action group. And we maybe want some stabilization out on these wings. I think that would help us pretty dramatically if we had 2 more drogue chutes out here. But overall, I'm going to physics warp us down towards the ground here. It looks a little wild, but remember that's 4x time warp. Or rather, physics warp. Okay, so there go our drogue chutes. And we also have more fuel here than we would be expecting to have. So we're coming down pretty quick here. I think additional stabilizing drogue chutes are going to be very important here. As well as some air brakes, like I said. But overall, that worked. Now this is going to go boom. But all we lost was the rocket motors, the atomic rocket motors. That was wonderful, actually. So let's pop back to the spaceplane hangar. And there's very little left to iron out here for recovery of this. A little bit slower on the fall would be nice. As I said, a pair of additional radial mount drogue chutes up here would be really, really good. So I'm going to place them there. This angling is really weird. Let's see what we can get done here. There we go. And we'll position them like that. And maybe back a little bit, like there. Yeah, I think that's good. And then we're going to want, like I said, some air brakes. So I'm going to put a pair of air brakes. I want these turned upside down. Here. And a pair down below as well. I want them to be about there. Actually, a little further back. So they'd need to be about in line with that gray stripe, right? A little further back than that, even. Okay, so about there. And then we would want them to be inactive for now. And their deploy angle being 70 degrees is completely okay. And that should work fine. It is, however, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to do our first real test flight. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.